Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Mooney. I'm a Senior Vice President, Group Director at Signature Bank right here in White Plains. I'm also proud to be a board member of the Westchester County Association and co-chair with my colleague Bill Cuddy of our Real Estate Committee and Task Force. On behalf of our President, Michael Ramita, our board, and our entire membership, we want to welcome everybody here to the WCA's fourth annual Real Estate and Housing Summit. One of the benefits of a virtual event is with this rain, and we're hearing reports of snow in parts of the county and region, is we don't have to delay our start waiting for people to arrive. And we save money on coffee and bagels. So I hope you are all enjoying your coffee and bagels and safe and sound wherever you are. So I am happy to be here today and privileged to MC today's event, help us guide us through today's event, which will include our keynote address from the President and CEO of Empire State Development, Eric Gertler, presentation of our annual WCA Playbook Awards, and a very important panel discussion on addressing the urgent need for diverse and affordable housing. Before we begin, I want to say a special thank you to our sponsors. Their names will appear up on the screen. Without their generous support, we couldn't produce this programming or much programming throughout the year. So we thank you so much for that. Another housekeeping note is those of you on planning or zoning boards, please make sure you contact Julia Emmerich of the WCA at some point after the training to make sure after the event so you receive your certificate of training. Julia's email address and contact should pop up in the chat box there. So make sure that you guys follow up with that. Today's event is a culmination of many months of hard work from the WCA's Real Estate and Housing Task Force. In late 2019 and early 2020, before COVID and the pandemic turned our world wacky and upside down, our task force got together with our committee members and other community stakeholders, and we identified housing as a number one priority to tackle and make a real difference. And please note at the WCA, when we try and identify issues we want to prioritize or approach, we want to make sure it's something we can make an impact on and move the needle on and not just talk about. So when I say housing, that's obviously a very broad term. But through our discussions, we narrowed and defined the issue as the inability to address housing concerns in our community is a critical issue towards the sustainability of business in our community. Makes sense, doesn't it? Critical areas were identified as necessary to be addressed to support addressing this housing issue, such as the understanding of incentives or IDAs or benefits, transportation and infrastructure support, as well as regulatory or zoning and planning reform, if necessary. Goes without saying that these critical issues were only exacerbated by the pandemic, so our work is even more important today, but our committee and the WC is not deterred from moving forward. Over the last few months, we've taken a number of specific action steps, including preparing and presenting today's event and panel to help educate people as some of the findings we've come up with, and releasing a new housing chapter in the WCA's policy playbook in conjunction with the PACE Land Use Law Center, as well as continuing to engage a broad range of stakeholders and the public and private sectors to help move the needle on this regional crisis. Quick reminder, you'll hear more about it later from Jessica Bacher, but the WCA's policy playbook was developed with the PACE Land Use Law Center, the WCA's Real Estate Task Force, and dozens of community planners and professionals as an educational tool for municipalities, planners, and developers. It's an amazing tool, and those of you who haven't taken advantage of it, please go on our website. Julia's putting it up there in the chat room. It's a wonderful tool. Please download it and try and take advantage of some of the hard work many of the professionals have done. As my fellow committee member, Tony Joffrey of Cuddy and Fader, I don't know if Tony's with us today, but as Tony put it through in one of our meetings, we cannot let this important tool sit on the shelf. It's a valuable device with a lot of time and effort into it and will help everybody move the needle forward. To that point, a major component of what our committee does is our thought as professionals is that all of us need to take ownership of an issue that we wish to resolve, such as this or other important issues. And we think it's critical as part of our work to educate our communities, as hopefully this panel will do today, and all parties, including an applicant or a developer, government officials, as well as the public, as to resources that are available, such as the policy playbook, issues necessary to be addressed to move a project forward, and where the other side might be coming from. All of this is done so that together we can move Westchester forward to address this and other important issues which are critical to the sustainability of our businesses and our community. Now, with that being said, let's start the program. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend and fellow WCA Executive Board member and Chief Strategy Officer and Associate Broker for Rand Commercial, Paul Adler. Rand Commercial is our keynote sponsor for today. Rand has a vast network of 29 offices throughout the region with a specialized knowledge of the current market conditions, inventory, zoning and planning laws, development and entitlement improvement process. Paul, thank you so much for your sponsorship and welcome.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you to the members of the WCA Real Estate Task Force and to the staff for putting this great event on today. It was a great day for New Yorkers when Governor Andrew Cuomo announced the nomination of Eric Gertler to serve as president and CEO of Empire State Development, New York's chief economic development agency. Mr. Gertler was the executive chairman of U.S. News and World Report and has been on the board of ESD since 2018. In the governor's nomination, he noted that Eric is an effective leader who spent decades at the intersection of business, media, and government, making him uniquely suited to run our state's chief economic development and tourism agency. Upon accepting the governor's nomination, Eric Gertler thanked Governor Cuomo for his confidence that he placed in him and the privilege it was to serve the people of New York. He stated that he had boundless faith in New York's potential, economic potential. And he looked forward to supporting Governor Cuomo in further strengthening the dynamic economy for this and future generations. In addition to his role as executive chairman of U.S. News and World Report, the nation's largest news authority on rankings, Mr. Gertler oversaw Ulysses Ventures, a multi-strategy investment fund based in New York City, and previously served as executive vice president of the New York City Economic Development Corporation and managing director of the Center for Economic Transformation under multiple mayoral administrations. Among the initiatives that Mr. Gertler spearheaded was the city's $150 million life science fund and associated programs to accelerate the life science industry in New York City. He also oversaw the development of the city's tech platform, Digital NYC, and expanded the Big Apple Civic Competition. Eric Gertler is a published author and has written and spoken extensively on key policy issues of economic development priorities ranging from urban and state matters, workforce development, infrastructure investment, technology advancement, entrepreneurship, innovation, and real estate. He is a board member of the Columbia University Zuckerman Mind and Brain Behavior Institute. He's on the board of governors of the Technion Institute in Israel. And from 2015 to 2017, Eric Gertler served as co-chairman and co-publisher of the New York Daily News. He began his illustrious career as an attorney with Skadden Arps. He is a dear friend, a committed public servant, and I am honored to introduce the president and CEO of Empire State Development, Eric Gertler.
Great. I think Paul, what a kind introduction. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very heartfelt. And most importantly, I think my mother would have a big smile on her face hearing that. So I very much appreciate that. And Bill, Michael, and the board, thank you for all of your work. Thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here for the 4th annual Real Estate and Housing Summit in Westchester County. And I'll start off by saying, given the remarks that Paul said via the governor, it's been a privilege to be able to serve the governor, certainly during these last difficult 8 months, and also the state of New York. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to drive up north, and I know today is snowing. It's raining in New York City. Snow used to actually be a fun day in our household until I told my 11-year-old that you realize that with the way things have changed, you may never get a snow day ever again because you can now do all your schoolwork from home. That was not a very pleasant conversation, but it's just another example of how things have changed in the last 8 months. But as I said yesterday, I had the opportunity to drive up to Utica, New York, something that I used to do 8 months ago all the time, getting an opportunity to drive around the state. That, in fact, was my first time in Utica in 8 months. I was there for the topping off ceremony for Cree Semiconductor. It was the final last beam for their silicon carbide wafer device manufacturing facility, which will actually become the largest in the world, which is amazing. I mean, in this time of craziness, to have what was, in the past, a sense of normalcy and a sense of excitement of being able to put on that last beam. And, to me, that's a reflection of where New York continues to go. That is, as the CEO of Cree likes to say, that will be part of the formation of the Silicon Carbide corridor. There may be Silicon Valley in California, but we are creating a brand new industry that is 21st century, and this will lead to providing all the chips that will go into cars as part of the Internet of Things. But as we all know, while yesterday was perhaps a normal day in how we look at it generally, things have definitely not been normal over the last 8 months. So as president and CEO of Empire State Development, which, as you know, and Paul pointed out, is the state's chief economic development agency, I'm happy to give you an update of what's going on around the state and some of the ways we're looking at your area and some other parts of the state. So on a general level, the focus of ESD is to, and always has been, is to grow jobs, is to attract businesses, is to help support the economy of New York State. And it has not been lost, the irony that in March, when this terrible virus, struck New York State, that ESD was charged with closing businesses across the state. Irony for a state, for an agency that has been focused on growing jobs and attracting businesses to New York State. And yet, over the last 8 months, daunting task indeed, facing this crisis, which has been both a health crisis, an economic crisis, but you want to add in as well, it's also been a social justice crisis as well. But as we've worked under the leadership of the governor to flatten the curve and then decrease coronavirus, always thinking about health crisis versus economic crisis and emphasizing the health of New Yorkers. And as we've taken a data science focus towards combating COVID, we've put health first because we have known that without combating COVID, it's hard to get anything else truly moving. And quite frankly, the data-driven, science-focused strategy that the governor has put in place has led to reduced statewide positivity rates. Many of you have seen the press conferences that the governor holds. Those rates have been as low as, have been hovering around the 1%, lately just a little bit up. But this is a product of the hard work of New Yorkers, aggressive testing, strong leadership from the top. And if you look at a most recent survey that has been taken from Johns Hopkins, and we all know that 8 months ago we were the worst. According to that latest study, New York State is second lowest in terms of spread, with the exception of the state of Maine. So indeed, as the governor likes to say, we are truly New York tough. Just a few macro issues in terms of how we are thinking, or how the governor is thinking about the crisis. First, we have now focused on what we call a micro cluster strategy for combating, the COVID virus. And whereas many months ago we looked at large swaths of the region and we're closing things down. Now, with the technology that we have and the sophistication, we're able to look at areas where there's dense cases and hotspots and be able to reduce that without shutting down large regions. And that too, that strategy too has worked. Take Orange County, which has been removed from red zone and moved to orange, and we're seeing reductions in other clusters as well. And so I think we continue to sort of innovate on how we think about combating the COVID. The other areas we think about going forward and combating COVID, but also thinking through how do we ultimately get ourselves out of the lives that we're in and a return to normalcy, is thinking through the vaccination. Ultimately, as the vaccination comes forward, the governor has talked about a vaccination administrative program that allows for the flexibility that's needed. And I think what many don't put into context is that the vaccine is one part of being able to bring a resolution to Americans and to New Yorkers. Once you have the vaccine, you still need to manufacture it. Still need to distribute it. You still need a process. You need to figure out how you prioritize it. Many of which the governor has talked about, including, how do you prioritize who gets the vaccine, from thinking about most at risk to essential workers and so on. But even then, there still remains a lot of unknown. But New York State has put together a plan, and we are starting to think through how do you prepare for the inevitable time that we do have a vaccine. Let me talk a little bit about what ESD is doing. As I said early on, we had to change our focus from being a job growth agency to managing the shutdown of businesses. Two areas in particular where ESD has focused on. One has been supporting the need for PPE equipment, so that those not just essential workers on the front line, but New Yorkers in general have access to the types of supplies that are needed. You may remember that we also had a crisis in terms of these supplies because everybody was competing on it, on supplies from around the world, and prices were hijacked and increased. We have, at the direction of the governor, focused on developing and retooling operating businesses, manufacturers throughout the state, in helping to focus on critical needs in terms of PPE. And so over the last number of months, since April, we have funded almost 28 businesses to help them pivot and manufacture to be able to provide vital supplies, surgical masks, N95, face shields, gowns, and so on. And this has been a critical part of not just pivoting the economy, but also ensuring that we're providing thousands of jobs to New Yorkers. Many of these businesses have been in your region. Take Aero Healthcare in Rockland County, producing bottles and pumps for hand sanitizer, or Zeal in Orange County, which is manufacturing N95 respirators. So we've seen those businesses develop, pivot, and then start manufacturing all around the state. The second thing is as I mentioned, first and foremost, we've been dealing with a health crisis, but we've also been dealing with an economic crisis. And as in most cases, it is the smallest of businesses that are most affected. Many of you may know that 98% of businesses in New York State are small businesses, less than 20 employees. They have been most hard hit during this pandemic. Certainly, those that have retail fronts, you're dealing with the double whammy of not just the economic crisis of people not leaving their houses, but also not being prepared from a digital standpoint at a time when retail has been hurt. So We have spent time thinking about that. We have launched two programs in particular. One focused on very small minority and women-owned businesses, where we created the $100 million New York Forward Loan Fund that the governor announced over the summer. And this has been able to, although there's been a lot of PPP money that has come from the federal government, many of these small businesses were not able to access those monies. Sometimes banks ensured that they went to some of their larger customers. And so we launched this fund as a means to help support minority and women-owned businesses, and ensuring that in some cases these businesses needed as little as $50,000. And this fund has been able to provide for that, working with the CDFIs throughout the state. And then second of all, knowing that small businesses also need to digitize, they need to prepare themselves even further, more dramatically now, given what we've seen with this pandemic for the digital world. Many of these small businesses have not been able to have the resources to digitize their businesses, expand beyond physical brick and mortar locations. We created the Empire State Digital Program, one of our newest programs, where we partner with a number of leading global e-commerce companies, Square, Shopify, Etsy, and Clearbank, to give small businesses in New York State preferred opportunities to work with these companies on preferred terms to be able to start to digitize their businesses and better prepare for the 21st century. And that program has also been combined with mentoring and assistance with many of our entrepreneurial centers around the country. So through that program, they get the ability to put their supplies online, they get financing, they learn to market in an improved way. All the tools that you need to become much more productive, much more expansive in the 21st century. And as well, we've used all of our traditional tools to help support small businesses, whether it's our 70 entrepreneurial assistance centers, providing loan capitals to which we did. We provided $21 million of loan capital to the CDFIs to help provide PPP money, expanding the New York manufacturing extension manufacturing. So we have used every tool that we have to ensure that these businesses can thrive and help to make sure that the neighborhoods that they are in can continue to be able to rely on them and rely on those, on those jobs. Let's also talk now a little bit about Mid-Hudson. We've certainly thought about the macroeconomics of New York State, but at the same time, we've focused on our regional efforts. In Mid-Hudson, I just want to highlight a number of recent projects. Clearly, we're focused on making sure that Mid-Hudson remains a place where people can live, work, and play. And so just a few examples of some of the projects that we have launched. Last week, we celebrated a groundbreaking for the Academy in Poughkeepsie, located on Academy Street in the heart of the city's central business district. The Academy will house affordable apartments, co-working space, and commercial space to further the city region as a place to work, live, and play. And that goes to what Bill was saying at the opening of his remarks of thinking through how do you improve the community, how do you provide affordable housing, and how do you think about multiple uses out of the efforts that we're making. We also help to revitalize the Ashburton Avenue Capital Project, helping to beautify that distressed area of Yonkers. And that project spurred the development of a 609-unit residential project nearing completion at the intersection of Ashburton and the Hudson River. So that was part of the REDC monies that helped on that project. And I can continue with a number of other projects, in terms of how we've helped in terms of affordable housing. Also, we've been investing in innovation on the medical side. Bionic at New York Medical College is Mid-Hudson only fully equipped biotech incubator on Health Sciences College campus to help support the development of early stage companies and high potential entrepreneurs within the life sciences. As Paul noted, life sciences has been a passion of mine in terms of the time that I've been able to serve in public service. But, even with the crisis, we've had to ensure that we are investing in innovation and investing in the companies of the future and the industries of the future so that, as we emerge from the crisis, we have built some of the building blocks for this economy. Now, I know this is a real estate group, but let me just talk to you about some of the major real estate projects that are going on around the state. First of all, and these are, downtown and upstate, Long Island, in New York City. Next year, we'll announce the opening. We've been working on a $1.5 billion Javits Center expansion. That'll open up in the spring. And that, as well as we emerge from the crisis, be a leading center for new and expanded events. Later this year, we will open up the $1.6 billion Moynihan Station, which will finally transform the iconic Farty building into the new home of Amtrak and LIRR. That will be an open space that will be larger than Grand Central. And as well, to give you a sense of, when the governor announces these large initiatives, we will have Moynihan Station on the east side, but on the west side will become the new offices for Facebook. That'll be about 750,000 square feet. And again, there's an indication of how, even at the time when companies are saying that you can work from home, businesses do understand that to develop your culture, to train employees, to get a sense of how you knowledge share in the 21st century, you do need to be back in offices. And I think Facebook, which has been very outspoken in saying that employees will work from home, at the same time have recognized with this investment at the Farty building that office space is certainly needed, even for all of these what we call emerging. Although at this point Facebook's not emerging, but these predominantly tech companies. Last year, the governor announced the beginnings of the Empire Station complex, a project to transform the area around Penn Station, and also to add additional railroad lines into Penn. That project, which will take many years, but that will revitalize that entire area. 2 weeks ago, I also had the opportunity to go to Belmont Park. We are working to build a new home for the New York Islanders. That will be open up next year in time for the 21-22 hockey season. And that'll include a retail and entertainment center. That'll also go with expanded LIR train station. And it will become known as the UBS Arena. So another large project. And then I would be remiss if I didn't also point out that that next summer we will also see Legoland in your area come to fruition, which has been a $400 million plus investment to create a 150-acre Legoland themed park in Orange County, and that is their largest investment of any park for Legoland. That will certainly be transformative on many ways for local, regional, economy. It was also the project that gave my job relevance to my 11-year-old, that I could talk about all these projects, but when I talked about going to Legoland, that's when my job became important in the household. And so, but as you can see, we have lots of projects going on around the state. From a data standpoint, just to give you a sense, I mean, clearly there's a long way to go. We have a long recovery. As the governor says, we are New York tough and we will build back better. And already when you go from the low points back in March, and you look at, you take September, for example, both in New York State and New York City, unemployment has come down across the state, about 9.7% compared to 12.5% in August. We've seen increased job growth in September, up 75,000 jobs in September, fifth straight months of job increases. And then in terms of transportation, we've seen increased usage of transportation as well. If you take the New York, if you take the subway, take one date, we had on October 15th, 1.84 million people riding the subway, highest single day passenger ride since mid-March. Yet, and let's put it into context, it's still 70% below peak. Same thing if we take, Metro North. We had on October 15th, 67th, almost 68,000 people ride, which has been, a high when you think about it since last March. But that's also down about 75% from the peak. So we are incrementally improving, and those are positive signs, but we need to put it into the larger context of where we were 8 months ago. And then, of course, overlaying all of this data is a small event that will occur next week that will have profound effect. And that, of course, is the election on next Tuesday. And I will not prognosticate on the election, but we all know that will have reverberating effects on New York State and, of course, across the country. And so, so that gives you a sense of how we are looking at the current climate, both from the governor being very focused on both combating COVID-19 and managing it in terms of the health risks. At the same time, a number of these projects, the governor has tasked us with, accelerating all of the infrastructure projects that we have, the exponential benefits of moving forward on all these projects, focusing on each of the regions with projects that we can continue to move forward, and being as entrepreneurial and innovative as we can with coming up with projects to help businesses throughout the state. It continues to be a great privilege to work for the governor and New York State. You never know what to expect. I didn't know that how much my job would change when I had the good fortune and privilege of being able to join this agency some 15 months ago at this point. In terms of leading it, obviously I was on the board before then, but I do continue to have great faith in New York State, the people of New York, and I truly do believe that with everything we have going on, we will build back better, and we will breathe life back into our local communities, our regional communities, and into the state. With that, I just want to say thank you very much for letting me be part of your summit today. And I'm glad that we could all be present and stage rise. So thank you so much.
Eric, thank you so much for your time, for joining us today, for your informative thoughts, and most importantly, all of your hard work on behalf of New York State. We now have two very special awards to give out before we start our important panel discussion. I'll be joined here by Jessica Bacher, Executive Director of the Land Use Law Center and WCA board member, to present the annual Playbook Award.
Thank you, Bill. I'm honored to present a WCA Policy Playbook Award to the City of White Plains for its leadership in creating diverse and affordable housing. This is an exciting moment every year, and we look forward to this process. And it was very clear when we were turning our attention to housing, what community we thought could receive this award. So as you mentioned earlier, in 2018, in partnership with the Land Use Law Center, WCA launched the Policy Playbook. This guide was developed to provide planning, regulatory, and other strategies and resources that will help Westchester County municipalities implement economically viable smart growth development. It's a great tool. The link is in the chat, so I encourage you to take a look at it. I guess I'm a little biased, but still take a look. It's intended to give you resources right at your fingertips, funding sources, examples of what your neighbors are doing for those community members on, and see and really learn from others. So we recently did launch the Housing Initiatives chapter to the playbook, in which the efforts of White Plains are featured. White Plains has taken concerted efforts to develop affordable housing in its city. This is exemplified by its recent amendments to its affordable housing rental regulations to increase the overall number of affordable units in the city and to ensure that the city remains accessible to people at varied income levels. Its focus on this is very important, and we want to highlight it in this book as well as in the awards this year. So for its affordable housing efforts, I congratulate the City of White Plains, and I present Mayor Roach with a 2020 WCA Playbook Award.
Thank you very much, Jessica, for this award, and I thank the WCA. We're very proud of our affordable program here in the city. It's been going since when Mayor Delfino was here. I'm looking out my window right now over at the city center where that was built to incorporate 10% affordable, and that became our program. Whereas, many communities try and stop affordable housing from coming in, which makes no sense to me on any level. But we in White Plains, we love to live in a diverse community, and it will only remain diverse if we provide housing for everyone. Our updates to our program have cut out the gap that we had between where federal housing kicks in and where our program started at 60%. We've now dropped down, so there is no gap. There'll be providing housing for everyone. We also, with our federal housing, are replacing our buildings at what was formerly known as Winbrook, now Brookfield Commons, one by one. All the low-income units remain, but there will be mixed income on the site as well, and we're proud of that. White Plains is unique, I think, in that we're a very diverse community where all of our kids go to school together from kindergarten, and that makes a big difference. But how they wake up in the morning before they go to school also makes a big difference. And I think every child is entitled to wake up in a safe, comfortable housing that they can feel proud of when they enter that schoolhouse door. And so I really appreciate WCA's recognition, but I also appreciate the fact that WCA recognizes that the first reason to do this is to help people. The second is to maintain the diversity we love in our community. But the third is that we will not be an economically viable region if we cannot provide housing for everyone, because not everyone makes the type of salaries that the high-end salaries. People who make a good living here that would put them at the top of the hill in Des Moines struggle to be able to pay for a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. So WCA stepping in, taking this position is important. I think we all need to work together. We're working with the county on some things now, and so thank you for this. And I was told to make it like an Oscar presentation, so thank you. But before I get played off, I know you have a schedule. I'll say adieu.
Thank you, Mayor Roach. Tom, very well said. You summed up our feelings exactly. So thank you, and thank you to the City of White Plains for all you're doing. Now it's my distinct pleasure to present a special recognition award to an extraordinary member of the land use and legal community here in Westchester, a person that most of us know well and respect a great deal, an individual that I am privileged to call a friend. The founder of the Land Use Law Center at Pace University School of Law, John Nolon. In fact, I was privileged to be in Professor Nolan's first land use property class, a fact that I like to brag about, but he does not like to admit. The WCA's real estate initiatives would not be where they are without John Nolon and the entire Land Use Center team and John's vision and leadership. An icon of the land use community in Westchester and nationally. an individual whose efforts in championing collaboration and whose ability that I've seen firsthand to bring parties together for the purposes of advancing smart growth for the benefit of the entire community is well known and admired. Professor Nolon, on behalf of the Westchester County Association and the entire Westchester community, it's my pleasure to thank you for all that you have done and present you with this award for your unparalleled leadership in land use and sustainable law. Here you go, John.
Hey, Billy, how did he do that? He's a magician. This is Halloween, the trick. You know, he is a magician. He turned a law degree from Pace Law School in very short order into a distinguished career in government as a municipal attorney, as a policy advisor to the county, now is a leader in the lending sector. And Billy, thank you so much for your friendship and for this award. I think there's a possibility, although it's coming from such an august group with so much expertise in housing and sustainable development, that you've made a mistake, because you can't attribute what's going on in sustainable development and smart growth to just one person. Every little idea that or project that we've nudged along has been the work product of municipal attorneys and mayors and local legislators and developers and professionals from all walks of life. And I accept it, so no mistake can be made on behalf of all those people, and particularly the Land Use Law Center. Again, thank you, Bill Mooney, and thank you, WCA, for this tremendous award. Now, I've been asked to make a few remarks about smart growth, and I know we're a little behind on time, so I'll abbreviate a little bit what I have to say, but I wanted to start out by telling you that we've kind of invented smart growth here in our region. Starting just after World War II in Tarrytown, I can imagine on one night in 1947, Tarrytown needed to get workers because it needed employers, it needed tax base, and was trying to figure out how to do that. And some municipal attorney and some dedicated developer and some mayor back in 1947 said, why can't we create a floating zone that zones something for multifamily housing and let it float? And then alight after the developers bought some land at a relatively affordable price, so that that developer can create garden apartments in what was a single family neighborhood, as long as it's 10 acres or more in size. 1947, these geniuses sat together, this coalition, these partners in smart growth, sat together and invented what I think is the first smart growth technique in this country, and we called it floating zoning. And then, in my opinion, smart growth as a pattern of development, conserving land that should be conserved and developing land that can be served by infrastructure that will be close to jobs, was created in 1972 in Ramapo, when Ramapo, advised by Bob Froelich, who is now one of the most distinguished land use law professors in the country, put together a smart growth program that involved growth control, concurrency. We'll develop where we can put the infrastructure. That idea was picked up by Governor Paris Glendening 25 years later, and he's the one who coined smart growth by taking that idea, putting infrastructure money where we need development and putting open space and environmental money where we need to protect ecosystem services. So that's really the origin of smart growth. And anybody who would like to read the story of the surprising origins of smart growth can email me, and I'll send you a volume of the Pace Environmental Law Review where we discuss that. Now, to move along a little bit more quickly than I was wanting to, I can just say that in 1974, a developer named Bob Lusk, working with the supervisor of Lewisboro, invented what Mayor Roach has taken to scale in White Plains, bonus density housing, so that you could create affordable housing by giving bonus densities. We didn't know we could do that until Bob Lusk and the attorney for Lewisboro and the Lewisboro supervisor figured that out. In Dover Plains, just north of Lewisboro in Dutchess County, they created an overlay district to protect the sole source aquifer. That's smart growth technique. Art Collins, who you'll hear from later, has been working in Yonkers for years and years, back in the late 1990s, working with a very creative municipal attorney and a very dedicated city council and mayor, created a regulatory plan that greatly streamlined the development of Hudson Park, got it to market on time, gave it the density it needed, and really, in my opinion, sparked the whole redevelopment of the waterfront in downtown Yonkers. Sleepy Hollow, I can almost see Sleepy Hollow from my window here in Terrytown. Had a local attorney who's a friend of mine, who's a nationally known environmental lawyer, who took the toxic cleanup law from the state of New Jersey, flipped it, called it a local law, got to the city council, got the board of trustees to adopt it, and it led to the cleanup of the GM site, which is now hosting about 1,177 units of housing, some of it affordable, in a mixed-use community on the waterfront in Sleepy Hollow. Mayor Bramson worked with us for years through the Mayor's Redevelopment Roundtable on an idea that we wanted to take to scale called a detailed generic environmental impact statement, where you could do environmental impact analysis on a downtown transit-oriented development site and streamline the environmental impact reviews of the subsequent projects. And that has worked fabulously for New Rochelle and is an example for all of us. And then Portchester, just a week and a half ago, dedicated itself to mitigating the impacts of gentrification. You know, it just adopted a village-wide form-based code, and it was worried about how it's going to displace all the legacy businesses. The reason that people go to Portchester quite often is for their legacy bakeries and cafes and delis and all these mom and pops downtown that may be gentrified out. And they made a commitment. They adopted a plan, the first of its type, we think, in the county just a week and a half ago. And then White Plains today is being honored with this, what I call an accordion style inclusionary zoning ordinance, patterned after 30 or 40 other local in Westchester County inclusionary zoning ordinances, taking it a critical step further to become this accordion that reaches out to include inclusivity for all people. So Mayor Roach, congratulations. And what I want to end with is that these innovations were initiated by creative and dedicated developers, lawyers, citizen leaders, but the common and strongest thread among them is mayoral and legislative leadership. In pandemic speak, they are the essential workers. We need brilliant ideas, we need dedicated advocates, but without the mayor and the elected officials as implementers, we will not grow smart. So I wanted to say in closing that the question for all of us, the Westchester County Association, other civic groups, developers, the private sector, banks, other municipal advocates, is how can we give the support that is needed to these mayors and to these legislators who are the essential workers in smart growth in our area. The only way we're going to make progress is in providing workforce, affordable and homeless housing, and continue our innovations in smart growth is together in partnership with all those who govern our communities. So on behalf of them and on behalf of the Land Use Law Center, I'm happy and humbled to take this award. Thank you so much.
John, thank you so much. Boy, that is one brilliant guy. And you're very humble and kind to point out people that work behind the scenes, but the whole Westchester land use and legal municipal use community owes you a debt of gratitude, because without people like you coming up with these brilliant ideas and constantly pushing behind the scenes, I personally don't think we'd be where we are. So we owe you a debt of gratitude. So thank you so much, and congratulations to the Land Use Center and to Jessica, who is the executive director right now. Thank you, Professor Nolon. I'm going to turn it over to our chairman of the Real Estate Task Force and WCA board member, Bill Cuddy, for our panel discussion. Thank you again.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it, and echo your comments, Mayor Tom and John. Your leadership and commitment to both advocacy and educating others on these issues is just fantastic.